Stop being deceived by slippery people and bad alliances. Welcome to the Daily Devo. I am Vince Miller. This week we are in 1 Samuel chapter 11. I've titled this chapter, The First Test of Saul's Leadership, and today I'm going to be reading verses 1 through 4. It reads, Then Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh-gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said to Nahash, Make a treaty with us, and we will serve you. But Nahash the Ammonite said to them, On this condition, I will make a treaty with you, that I gouge out all your right eyes and thus bring disgrace on all of Israel. That sounds pretty reasonable, doesn't it? The elders of Jabesh said to him, Give us 7 days' respite, that we may send messengers through all the territory of Israel. Then if there is no one to save us, we will give ourselves up to you. When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul, they reported the matter in the ears of the people, and all the people wept aloud. So there are 3 very interesting details in the opening of this chapter that are important to note. First, we see that Jabesh-gilead is on the eastern side of the Jordan River. It was a stretch of land from the river looking toward the desert, which put them in a very vulnerable state. There were about 2.5 tribes on this side of the Jordan River. Second, even though the Ammonites have already gained control of Jabesh-gilead, they engage in a proposal. The agreement was to take control peacefully, but at the cost of the right eye of all the people of Israel. Now, removing the dominant eye would be an identifier, and it would also weaken any future revolt. Third, Nahash agrees to a 7-day interlude, and we're not told exactly why. This was probably because he knew that these people were more than just a single city and tribe, and he really didn't want to risk awakening the sleeping giant of Israel, which he ends up doing. So as this story develops in the chapter, we will discover that here in verses 1 through 4, there are 2 important lessons that are very applicable to all believers. First lesson, we should be guarded and cautious about engaging in relationships, doing business, or entering into agreements with people or groups of people who do not share our values and beliefs, especially if we suspect that they intend to harm us. Second, we also learn that we have a spiritual obligation and priority to engage in relationships, do business, and enter into agreements with other believers who need our support and our services. You know, I think today we could probably all agree that there is a spiritual enemy who opposes the work and the people of the Lord. At least I see it quite frequently. And the enemy seeks to divide and weaken and conquer believers like Nahash was trying to do here. In fact, the word Nahash is a Hebrew word which means snake. It's the same Hebrew word used for the serpent back in Genesis 3. Now, one way to avoid being deceived by a snake or a serpent is to avoid relationships with them and to be in better relationships with people and businesses and in agreements with brothers and sisters in the faith. Now, I'm going to confess this today. There was a time in my life when I was way more open to engagements with people who were not Christians and with whom I did not share biblical values. But after you have been burned a few times by slimy friends, slippery deals, and bitten by deceptive agreements, you learn that it's better to be burned by a believer who might turn back to God than one who will have you enter into an agreement only to pluck out your right eye, subject you to slavery, and cut you off from your heritage forever. And you know what's ironic about this exhortation for me today? Is that there are Christians out there who will contest what I'm saying. There are young men and young women who are dating people who are not believers, who believe that one day they'll persuade the person that they're dating to make a turn or a conversion of faith. They'll even engage in a permanent marital contract based on this hope because they feel compatible with the person on the other end. There are also business owners today who will contest this as well, who will engage in agreements with vendors and suppliers who do not share biblical values in hopes of influencing them for the kingdom, only to wake up one day and realize that they have compromised their biblical values to maintain the momentum and the money and the market value of their product and services. And there are employees, this is going to touch a nerve. There are employees right now who work in companies whose corporate values do not match with biblical values. While these companies and corporations at the same time project and oppress believers and force them to celebrate sin that the Bible opposes. And you know what I mean by that. Do you see how slimy and slippery the work of the serpent is? Today, you should thoroughly assess your relationships, agreements, and deals. Prioritize building biblical relationships and engaging in partnerships with like-minded, Christ-fearing believers. In this world of uncertainty today, we've got to come together as believers, support one another, and rely on each other. Our collective strength is powerful if we prioritize supporting the efforts of each other as we follow Christ. And you're going to see the power of that in the coming verses. I love you guys. I pray this has blessed you. If it has, share it with someone else. And I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.